Hey everybody, this is Guy with Badlands Gaming, and this week I'm going to be bringing you a video for my top 5 picks of quarterbacks for daily fantasy football. I'm really excited about the upcoming daily fantasy football season. I played it all last year and it was super enjoyable, and I wanted to go ahead and share some of my strategy and tips with you to help you have a successful daily fantasy football season. Now, little disclaimer, I'm not saying the tips and strategy that I provide are going to guarantee you to place in the top and win a bunch of money or anything like that. It would be awesome if it did, and if it does help, I would love to hear the success stories, but these are just my approaches, my tips and strategy that I wanted to share with you with no strings attached, no guarantees of wild success or anything like that, but I do think they are going to be helpful. So what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at the DraftKings $1 million game, the one where the winner is going to take $1 million. I believe they're giving away $5 million in prizes, and I'm picking that contest to do this analysis because I believe that contest is going to have the players, it's going to have the highest that I know of prize for the first place winner. So I think there's going to be the most excitement and the greatest chance that you as my viewer are also going to be playing in this contest as well, and that's important to me. So there's a few things that I like when I'm looking at a quarterback for daily fantasy football, and not every quarterback on this list is going to have all 3 of the things that I really look for, but they're all going to have at least one of them, and I want to go over those 3 things real quick before we get into the video. Number 1, I like it when a quarterback is in a game that's going to be a high-scoring game. Who doesn't like that, right? More points for the game total overall equals more points for your quarterback's team. More points for your quarterback's team typically indicates more points for your quarterback, and more points for your quarterback is more points for you as a daily fantasy football player. So that's number 1, and typically I like to look for your shootouts. Obviously, just looking at the screen, a couple potentials for high-scoring games: Green Bay and Jacksonville, Detroit and Indianapolis, Oakland and New Orleans. All of those could be very high-scoring games. You've got good offenses and bad defenses for a lot of these games. Not necessarily in the Green Bay game, but in the other games, I think you can see that. And we're not talking about the Russell Wilson game down here. That one's not a bad defense. But yeah, I like good offense, bad versus another good offense, bad defense, and I think you're going to see that as a trend through a few of our picks. The second thing that I really like is I like it when a quarterback plays indoors. You actually kind of see that on a few of the games on the screen here too, at the Detroit and Indy game and the Oakland and New Orleans game. I like that because the weather doesn't interfere with the game, so you don't have rain making the ball hard to catch or hard to throw or easy to fumble or whatever. No interference from the weather is your ideal setting for your quarterbacks. And finally, the thing that I like for a quarterback, and this one is not as crucial as the other 2, but I like it when a quarterback plays at home. I think it's important to have the fans on your side and not have to deal with the disruption to the play calling or the audibles from the opposing team's fans. So that does go into a lot of my picks as well. All right, for our number 5 pick, we're going to be going with someone that I consider a budget pick, someone who's going to save you some money to put into other positions, and that pick is going to be Sam Bradford. I really like Sam Bradford this week because he's going to be playing at home. Cleveland had the number ranked defense versus quarterbacks as far as fantasy is concerned last year, and Sam Bradford's going to be in a new offense with a new head coach. I believe that's going to allow him to be on the field longer than he was last year. Like I said, he's going to be at home, which is important, and he's playing against a defense that's going to have enough holes in it for him to be able to be effective. So I think you're going to find him putting up a lot of points this week. You're going to see, if you look at his game log, he put up 22, 21, 22, another 22-point game last year. So I think he easily could put up 20 to 25 points this week against Cleveland, and I'm taking him with my number 5 pick overall. All right, for my number 4 pick, we're going to what is almost an ideal situation based on the things that I described earlier. We're looking at a quarterback who is going to be indoors. He's on a good offense with a bad defense, playing against another good offense with a bad defense. The only thing is he's on the road. Our number 4 pick is Derek Carr. I think the Oakland and New Orleans game could be the highest scoring game of the week. New Orleans had the 32nd ranked defense versus quarterbacks last year. And Derek Carr put up 30 points a couple of times times last year. He put up 30, 32, 30.3, had a couple of mid to high 20s games, and I think he could easily put up 25 to 30 points this week. He's a little bit more expensive than the last one that we talked about, than Sam Bradford. He's $7,300, but I still think that's fairly affordable for the amount of points that he's going to be able to put out, which is why I have him at my number 4 pick. I think he's going to have a really good game. I think New Orleans is going to win this game. I could, of course, be wrong, but I think you're going to see Derek Carr needing to throw the ball even up to the last play of the game. I think Carr's a great pick, and I'm taking him at my number 4 pick this week. For my number 3 pick, we're going to look at a quarterback in a very similar situation to Derek Carr, and that's going to be Matthew Stafford. He's only $100 cheaper than Derek Carr. He's also playing on the road. He also is on a team that has a good offense and not that great defense, and he's also playing against a team that has a pretty good offense and not that great defense. And they're both playing indoors this week, so there's a lot of similarities between Stafford and Carr. The only reason why I have Stafford higher is because he's $100 less. And I really like his upside. Upside is obviously crucially important in daily fantasy sports. And for Stafford, if you look at his game log last year, he had a couple of games where he was in the high 30s. He had 2 37-point games, whereas Carr did not have any games in the high 30s. He just barely broke the 30 mark a couple of times. And Stafford had a few more games in the mid-20s than Carr did as well. So I think the odds of Stafford having that 25 to 30-point game is higher this week, just barely, than Carr. And I think you've got a recipe for a lot of points here in Matthew Stafford. So he just barely squeaks by Carr, and he's our number 3 pick this week. For our number 2 pick, we are going back to Oakland and New Orleans, and no, we are not taking the backup for Oakland. We are taking Drew Brees. Drew Brees is my number 2 pick this week. He's $8,100, which is a lot of money, but we're going to talk about why that's worth it here in just a second. First of all, we've got the same recipe. We've talked about good offense, bad defense versus good offense, bad defense. They're playing indoors, but this is the first time for anyone on the list that we're looking at the player who has both of those things, plus they're playing at home. So you're not going to have the opposing fans messing up the audibles or messing up the play calling or anything like that with this Drew Brees pick here. So if you look at Brees and his game log last year, he had a 31, 29. The mid-20s points are just kind of normal for him, so we aren't even highlighting those. 35, 49-point game. The upside for Brees is really, really high. And if you're looking at Brees playing against Oakland, there's really just a really good recipe, like I said, for a lot of points to be scored, and I think he's worth the $8,100. If you're looking at taking a receiver who's $65,000, $7,500, and then taking a quarterback who's $7,500, you're probably going to have a ceiling of 50, 55 points from the two combined. But if you look at someone like Drew Brees, who's $8,100, if you were to take that same recipe and look at, we said, a quarterback and a receiver in the previous example who totaled about $15,000 worth of salary cap. So if you're looking at Drew Brees, who's $8,100, and you spend $6,900 on another receiver, to have a receiver quarterback combo. Drew Brees upside this game, I mean, we're talking 35 or 40 points out of Drew Brees this week from what I predict. And if you're getting that much out of your quarterback, it's worth it to spend $8,100 and only $69 on a receiver. We've got some really good receivers this week that would pair well with that. I mean, and we'll go more into that when we get into the receiver video. But there's receivers out there like Allen Hurns, Sammy Watkins, people like that who are probably going to put up 20, 25 points themselves. At least that's what their highest output potential is. And if you get both of them to have their highest output potential game, I mean, you're looking 65, 70 points just from those two players combined. So paying the extra money for someone like Drew Brees is certainly worth it in my opinion this week, and we're taking him as our number 2 pick. All right, it's time to look at our number 1 pick for this week. So our number 1 pick is somebody who I think has very high upside, has a lot of potential this week to score a lot of points, and we're going to have to scroll actually pretty far down the list. He's going to be the cheapest pick that we've looked at so far, and for this pick, we're going with Brock Osweiler. That's right, we're going with Brock Osweiler for our number 1 pick this week. He's only $6,300, and I really like him for a lot of reasons. 1, he's playing at home. 2, he's playing indoors, which are two things that I mentioned earlier as being very important. 3, he's playing against a team that's got a really bad defense and a decent offense. And I think this is a game where you're going to see Osweiler have a lot of opportunities to put up a lot of points. I think being on a new team, the season opener in front of the home fans, I think they're going to want to showcase their new quarterback, and I think it's just a really good recipe for a lot of points. And look at his salary; it's $6,300. It's really hard to find the upside that a quarterback has this week, like Osweiler's, for that price tag. I mean, I think Osweiler could put up 30 points this week easy, and I think that's something that's really going to allow you to save some money to invest in other positions that could give you even more points. I mean, you might even be able to afford someone like a Julio Jones or someone like that this week if you wanted to, if you invest in Brock Osweiler. So I've got Brock Osweiler as my number one pick. He's playing against the 26th ranked defense last season against quarterbacks, and I really believe Brock Osweiler is a great pick. So I got him number one. Let me know what you think. Do you agree, disagree? I'm interested to see what everyone out there thinks. And just to recap our picks so far for this video, we had our number 5 pick was Derek Carr. Our number 5 pick was Sam Bradford. Number 4 was Derek Carr. Number 3 was Matthew Stafford. Number 2 was Drew Brees. And number 1 was Brock Osweiler. Stay tuned, everybody, though. We're going to be talking about wide receivers next, and we'll even get into a little bit of a discussion on some wide receiver quarterback pairs that are going to be good investments this week. And it doesn't necessarily have to be quarterbacks and receivers on the same teams, although a lot of times it will be. But I just think for the value, for the potential output that you could get from your wide receiver and quarterback, there's a couple good pairs that I really like this upcoming week. Well, thanks again, everybody. This has been Guy with Badlands Gaming, doing our first ever daily fantasy football strategy discussion, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.